A member of LSU's defensive staff reportedly headed to the NFL. What does it mean for the Tigers? We'll discuss. Locked on LSU. Here we go.
You are Locked On LSU, your daily podcast on the LSU Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Okay, let's get it. It is Locked On LSU, your team every day. I'm your host, Matt Moscona. Thanks so much for making us your first listen. We're free, available wherever you get great podcasts, of course, on YouTube as well. So please subscribe. And as always, one of the fastest ways to help us grow is by leaving your comments below. So thank you sincerely for that. Thank you for helping make the Locked On Podcast Network the #1 sports podcast network. Today's episode is brought to you by Mazda. We put the same drive into every detail. Wins define the moment. Putting in the work, that defines you. Stay tuned for highlights in this week's Moving the Game Forward. There's more to a Mazda because there's more to you. Jake Olsen is reportedly leaving the LSU staff to take a job with the Washington Commanders. Now, I want to point out here that this isn't done, but why this makes sense for Olsen and what this could mean for Lane Kiffin's staff, and in particular on the defensive side. So a couple of things first and foremost as we talk about this Jake Olsen report. It was kind of ambiguous from some of the top college football reporters, Matt Zenitz, Pete Nakos, among others. I want to read the tweet from these reports, okay? So Matt Zenitz reported, and I'm reading here directly, the Commanders are expected to hire LSU safeties coach Jake Olsen. Sources tell CBS Sports, talks about LSU, working at LSU the past couple seasons. There was the report from Pete Nakos, who also said, sources tell On 3 that Commanders are working to hire LSU safeties coach Jake Olsen. So CBS was first, then a lot of other reports followed. But one thing I think that's important to note here is this isn't done. And as I understand it, Olsen and the Commanders are still negotiating. So it certainly feels like it will get done. That's speculative on my part, just to be abundantly clear there. But it isn't, as of this point, all the way done. Now, first of all, let's talk about the tie to Washington and the Commanders and how this comes together. Because, the coaching profession tends to be very incestuous, where it's who you know and how you've connected the dots in the past on different staffs. And remember, Washington's head coach is Dan Quinn, and Dan Quinn just recently hired Durante Jones as his new defensive coordinator in Washington. Of course, Durante Jones was the LSU defensive coordinator for one season back in 2021. During that season, Blake Baker was LSU's linebackers coach. You may remember that. Durante was the DC and coach safeties. Blake Baker, they hired from Miami to coach linebackers. The analyst working with the linebackers under Blake Baker was Jake Olsen. So Olsen and Durante Jones were on LSU staff together in 2021. And we know the connect the dots after that. When Blake Baker was not retained by Brian Kelly initially in 2022, he was hired as the defensive coordinator at Missouri, brought Jake Olsen with him. Olsen worked with the linebackers at Missouri, incidentally, while he has coached safeties here at LSU for the last two seasons. But in any event, the point being, Durante Jones and Jake Olsen were on staff together at LSU in 2021. So that familiarity is there. There's also, and I don't cover the Washington Commanders, I watch them because of Jaden Daniels, but there is talk about Washington potentially targeting Mansour Delane in round one with their first pick. And of course, Jake Olsen was one of the guys that recruited Mansour Delane to LSU. So just some connect the dots there and how some of those synergies may work out. If this does in fact come to pass where Jake Olsen leaves LSU, I look at it in a couple of ways. What does that mean? What was his time at LSU? How did he fare? And then how do they replace him? So let's take those one at a time. Jake Olsen's first season at LSU as the safeties coach in 2024, that was maybe the worst safety play. And I've said this plenty, but I think that was the worst safety play I've seen in my life at LSU. And I don't necessarily lay all that at Jake Olsen's feet. I think it more so had to do with personnel, which we'll talk about. But, this is a defense that's produced first-round picks like LaRon Landry and Eric Reed and All-Americans and Butkus Award winners like Grant Delpit. There have been Jamal Adams. There have been incredible safeties at LSU over the past 20 years. In 2024, you had Sage Ryan, Jordan Gilbert, and Major Burns. And it was I talked to Brian Kelly about this so much. It was this constant hodgepodge mix and match, trying to find the best way to make that secondary play better and find the right guys at safety. And they just weren't any good. You had Deshaun Spears as a freshman that year who saw some playing time early in the season, that his snaps diminished as they decided to go with the veterans. But look at what happened in 2025. The dramatic improvement when you added A.J. Halsey and Tamarcus Cooley. You added two guys that were legitimate Power 5 safeties. And Halsey now is going to go off to the NFL draft. Cooley returns. And so when I look at the safety room for 2026, you would love to maintain the consistency with having Jake Olsen returning. Remember, you've retained everybody on the defensive staff, save Kyle Williams, who obviously is now back in his hometown at Ruston, coaching high school again. But everybody else is back, from Blake Baker and Corey Raymond and Coach Peoples coaching the edge rushers. So losing that continuity at safety is disappointing if Olsen does in fact leave. But you do have Tamarcus Cooley returning. You have Deshaun Spears returning. And you added Ty Benefield out of the portal, who was LSU's top target at safety from Boise State. Depending on what scouting service you look at, he was either the first or second best safety in this transfer portal class. And LSU effectively went and got him to replace the productivity they lost in A.J. Halsey, who was a one-and-done guy, was out of eligibility. So Benefield's going to be at LSU for 1 year. But when you look at Benefield, Cooley, and Deshaun Spears, that's really, really intriguing to see how all that could very well play out here in 2020, in 2026 for LSU's defense. So it could very well come to pass that Jake Olsen takes this commander's job, which means there will be an opening on staff. And I think there's a couple of ways that Lane Kiffin could go about doing this. Like, he could go hire a safeties coach. They could go scour the market and find who they think is the best guy to coach safeties. I think something that might be more realistic, though, is, and I would not rule out this possibility, is allowing Corey Raymond to coach the defensive backs again, unifying the corners and safeties. Again, I don't have any real insight. Like, I haven't spoken to anyone on staff. Again, Jake Olsen still hasn't been announced as the Commanders' safeties coach. And I think LSU is probably working to keep him, as there's still some negotiation going on with Washington. But assuming this does get done, you could unify corners and safeties again, which I know that Corey Raymond would like that. He would rather, the way that I've heard him explain it before is like, you wouldn't hire an offensive line coach and have someone coach tackles and another coach the guards. It's a unit that has to play 5 as one. Well, similar in the secondaries, the corners and the safeties, they all have to play together. And so unifying that position group might make sense, just to have Corey Raymond coach DBs again, which he's done in the past and could certainly do. That would allow Lane Kiffin to promote Chris Kiffin, his brother, to full-time. Now, remember, Chris, when he came over from Ole Miss, was getting promoted either way. And so on paper, Chris Kiffin and Blake Baker hold the co-DC title. And Chris Kiffin is working with linebackers while Blake Baker has moved to work with the star position, which is what I understand Deshaun Spears is going to play for LSU in 2026. But remember, all of these analysts in whatever role they're in, they can all coach on the field now, but you can only have your 10 full-time assistants, and those 10 full-time assistants have the benefit of being able to recruit off campus. They can go visit players and recruit away from campus, which the analysts and other support staff can't. So that may be the opportunity here for Chris Kiffin to make him one of the 10 full-time assistants, even though he's got the co-DC salary, and I'm sure will be paid commensurate with that title, which we have not seen yet, those contracts approved yet by the Board of Supervisors. So when they are, we'll know more detail. But that might be something they look at doing here in this instance. Or, as I mentioned, they could go hire a safeties coach to add someone. Or maybe what they do is they do go hire a safeties coach, but promote Chris Kiffin to be one of the 10 full-time on-field coaches who can go recruit off campus. And the safeties coach effectively holds the role that we've seen a lot of the analysts and support staff members have now, where they're coaching on the field. They just don't go coach, go recruit off campus. So just a few of the options that could be out there for LSU if, in fact, Jake Olsen does take the Commander's job. But we'll wait and see. I can tell you, Jake Olsen was at Endymion. He rode in the parade on Saturday night with Blake Baker, and so I think there's. I wouldn't say that it's all the way done. I mean, clearly you haven't heard the Commanders make an announcement, or LSU either. So if and when that does come to pass, we'll pass it along and talk about what LSU's next move may be. But Jake Olsen reportedly is in line or being targeted by the Commanders to be their next safeties coach. So we'll see if and when that happens. Okay, let me knock out a quick break. Baseball at the box this weekend. Tigers sweep Milwaukee. I'll give you my big takeaways. We'll do that next. It's Locked on LSU, your team every day. Workplace chaos, deadlines stacking up, inbox overflowing, and the one position you have to fill is still sitting open. When the pressure's on and you need the right hire, this is a job for Sponsored Jobs. Indeed, Sponsored Jobs helps you reach people who actually fit what you're looking for: skills, experience, location. So you're not just hoping the right candidate stumbles across your post. And here's a stat that says it all. In the time that we've been talking, companies like yours have made 27 hires on Indeed, according to Indeed data worldwide. So if you're hiring, spend less time searching and more time actually interviewing candidates who check all your boxes. Less stress, less time, more results when you need the right person to cut through the chaos. This is a job for Indeed Sponsored Jobs. And listeners of this show will get $75 sponsored job credit to help get your job the premium status it deserves at Indeed.com/podcast. Just go to Indeed.com/podcast right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? This is a job for Indeed Sponsored Jobs. We're also brought to you by our friends at Our Lady of the Lake, championship health partner of LSU Athletics, where they always remind you trust isn't given, it's earned. And just like LSU athletes earn every point on the court, FMOL Health, Our Lady of the Lake, earns trust every day. As LSU's championship health partner, they take care of the Tigers on the court and across Louisiana. Players like DJ Thomas, Flau'jae Johnson, Jada Richard, Michaela Williams, they trust the Lake to keep them healthy, strong, and in the game. And it's not just for athletes. From sports medicine to pediatrics, heart care to recovery, Our Lady of the Lake brings that same championship-level care to every family they serve. Trust the team that cares for the team you love. Our Lady of the Lake and LSU, together, we roar. Learn more at ololrmc.com/LSU. Want to get to this weekend takeaways at the box. We'll do that in just a second. But remember, you can find your team's direct URL sign-up link by clicking in the show notes and making sure that you can get an ad-free and go ad-free with Everydayer Club, with the Everydayer Club. Plus, the members-only Discord access. You can join at the URL that's linked in this show post notes. Thank you so much for making Locked on LSU your first listen every single day. Baseball Tigers sweep Milwaukee. If you're an everydayer, shout out and thank you. And if you found our show last baseball season, thank you for that as well. One of the things that we did was I did a live post-game reaction for every baseball game last year. There is an asterisk. I missed two. But anyway, when you play 70 some odd games and you miss 2, we were pretty committed to it, and I love doing it. A lot of you asked if we're doing that again, and we are. So now I was at Endymion Saturday night, so I did miss the post-game show from Saturday's game 2 of the series, but I gave you my reaction, my live reaction to games 1 and 3, and the Tigers do play on Monday with Kent coming in, and they'll play Nichols on Wednesday. So 8 games in 10 days to open the season is a pretty big grind for the Tigers. But a few takeaways. You can get the full show game recaps if you want to go back and listen. I highly recommend you do that. But just a few of the overview takeaways I had. On the mound, LSU pitching struck out 49 Milwaukee hitters over the 3 games. That is a record for a weekend series. That is the most amount of strikeouts by an LSU pitching staff against an opponent in a 3-game weekend series in program history, which is a mouthful when you think about it. But I think what it shows you is the arm talent that this staff has. We've talked about it if you've been here and you've heard our preseason conversations. And I've said it many times that this is Jay Johnson's most talented team. And people somewhat scoff at that because of the team that had Skeens and Cruz. And those 2 guys were undeniably the best top-level talent. But that 2023 team had a lot of program guys, guys like Gavin Dugas and Josh Pearson and Cade Beloso and Alex Milazzo that helped them win the national championship. The team a year ago was almost stunning, the job Jay Johnson did with that squad. They rode 2 hot pitchers straight through the postseason with Anderson and Hines, and of course, you had great bullpen performances from guys like Shores. But the point is, this team is going to be Jay's most talented team. Like, we may look back in 10 years and say that team produced the most, this team produced the most big leaguers. But the strikeout numbers are impressive. What you have got to work on is pitchability that will allow your starters to extend deeper in the game. Look, Cooper Moore was awesome. He's the Kansas transfer. We've talked about him. Cooper Moore threw 76 pitches. 61 of them were strikes, and he pitched you through 6 innings. He never got to a 3-ball count. Now, he did strike out 11, but the point is, when you look at the days that Kason Evans and William Schmidt had, the 2 sophomores, Evans threw 75 pitches and only made it 3 1/3. William Schmidt threw 91 pitches and got through 4 innings. Generally, you want to be at the 12 to 15 pitch per inning average. So if you're going to get to 90 pitches, you want to be getting through 6 innings. Keep in mind, Evans made it through, Moore made it through 6 innings on 76 pitches. Kason Evans threw 75 pitches, went 3 1/3. So that's concerning that you, but let me rephrase. I don't want to say concerning. It's one opening weekend series against Milwaukee. It's encouraging the strikeout numbers, the ability, the arm talent these guys have. They've got to learn how to pitch deeper into games by understanding a 2-pitch at bat that yields a ground ball out is better than a 9-pitch at bat that yields a strikeout. Because the 2-pitch at bat that's going to induce weak contact is what's going to allow you to pitch deeper in the game. Now, we also got to see a whole bunch of bullpen arms. I thought Gavin Guidry was awesome. 5 of the 6 outs he recorded were via the strikeout, struck out the side when he came in the 8th. And then Devin Sheeran and Grant Fontenot were both also awesome and came in sticky spots. In game 2, in the final inning, when the bullpen was faltering a little bit, Fontenot came in and got the final out of the game. And then on Sunday, when Garcia was struggling and allowed a 3-run homer, Sheeran came in and went boom, boom, back-to-back strikeouts to get out of the inning. So I think it's great that guys that you're planning on counting on, like Guidry and Sheeran and Fontenot, had really good outings to start the season. It just wasn't going to be the case for everyone. Obviously, it never is. It was a little concerning to see Zach Cowan struggle the way he did. Garcia, remember the Oregon transfer lefty, is going to be a guy that they really count on out of the bullpen but he got roughed up a little bit, walking a couple guys and giving up the 3-run homer. And then Marcos Paz was also interesting. If you didn't watch the game on Sunday, Paz is a guy that most people assumed was just going to be a high school signee to the pros. But he had an injury which required surgery. It effectively landed him on a college campus, and you saw all the abilities. He was popping the mid at 97, and he fills out the uniform and looks awesome. He worked into and out of trouble. He did load the bases, but came back and got a strikeout on a 3-2 pitch with the bases loaded on Sunday, and then a ground ball to get out of it without allowing a run. And then he went back out there for another inning and again got in trouble this time, allowed runs to score. But I love the fact that so many guys were able to get mound time. And also we saw so much rotation on the infield as well, with guys like Caraway playing both the left and right side of the infield. Same with Dardar, same with Tanner Reeves. So we got to see some of the young guys get in there, like Jack Ruckert. So it was a very productive weekend from the standpoint that Jay Johnson and his coaching staff were able to get a lot of guys mound time and get a lot of guys at bats and field time, both left and right side of the infield, and got guys like Daniel Harden getting reps in the outfield. So that was fantastic to see. Offensively, you won 3 games over the weekend, 3 very different ways. On Friday, you were trailing 5-2 in the 6th, and you rallied to run rule Milwaukee. On Saturday, you played a very close game. You faced their ace; they pitched off, so you faced their ace, and you found a way to win a close ball game behind a dominant pitching performance. And then on Sunday, you went and just bludgeoned the baseball and scored 21 runs. And you're going to win games in a lot of different ways. What was good to see is that this team, over the course of 3 days, won 3 games in 3 very different ways. So Tigers are off and running. They're 3-0. They will play, as we mentioned, on Monday, on Wednesday, and then Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So they will have 8 games in their first 10 days. And, of course, we'll be following it right here on Locked on LSU. Let me knock out our final break. Come back and wrap it up next. Locked on LSU, your team every day. This is Mazda's moving the game forward for those who show there's more to the score than what's on the screen. Of course, how could we not talk about the day that Jake Brown had on Sunday? 3 hits, including 2 homers, one of them a grand slam. The junior from Lake Charles, poised for a monster season, very likely his last in Baton Rouge. But a day like that reminds us what it takes to raise the bar, the extra work off the field, dialing in every detail, giving it the extra fire, the grit, the I never quit. Mazda puts that same passion into every model. Highlights make the reel. What it took to get there makes it count. There's more to a Mazda because there's more to you. And we're brought to you by FanDuel. Ever want to experience the NBA Finals live and in person? Well, FanDuel is giving you the chance to turn that dream into a reality with their NBA sweepstakes. Here's how it works. Use your profit boost on any NBA future, and you'll automatically be entered for a shot to win an NBA Finals trip for 2. That's right, flights, tickets, the whole experience. Listen, I love futures this time of year, whether it's picking a team to win the championship, maybe grab a conference title. It adds the extra layer of excitement for every game down the stretch. So visit FanDuel.com to get started. Use your profit boost on an NBA future and get entered for your chance to win a trip to the NBA Finals. Play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Sometimes sports are just perplexing. And LSU's inability to beat South Carolina in women's basketball is one of those things that just is head-scratching. After the win Saturday night for South Carolina in Baton Rouge, you probably have heard by now, but that's 18 consecutive wins in this series for South Carolina over LSU, including all 6 that Kim Mulkey has coached against South Carolina during her time in Baton Rouge. Now, LSU had some lean years prior to Kim Mulkey getting here, obviously, but the fact that LSU under Kim Mulkey has been unable to solve the South Carolina riddle is just mind-boggling. It really defies logic, almost like LSU football losing 8 straight to Alabama, or like I'll give you another Alabama example, but Georgia seemingly their inability, despite their dominance, to get over that hump against Alabama. But sometimes there are things that happen like that just don't make an awful lot of sense. But you've got to find ways to close games. Flaugier had an opportunity to give LSU a lead late. She missed 2 free throws, and really the missed opportunities for LSU, or we did them in. You give South Carolina all the credit in the world, but LSU missed 10 layups and 9 free throws. Let me say that again slowly. LSU missed 10 layups and 9 free throws on their home floor in losing to South Carolina. Now, I would say you're going to have to find a way to beat them if you want to win a national championship, but that's not the case. I mean, LSU didn't beat South Carolina in their national championship season, and ultimately, went to the national championship game and won it against Iowa. But it feels like to get where you want to go, you're going to have to find a way to solve that puzzle, and they just haven't been able to. And maybe it's something that just becomes psychological that affects your physical ability to go perform at the highest level. But that's a code that Kim Mulkey and her squad hopefully will be able to crack, because chances are, the upper crust in women's college basketball is just not very deep. It's why you see a lot of repeat champions in that sport. It's dominated by the few, and LSU and South Carolina are in that mix, meaning you're likely going to see them again if you want to get where you want to go this year, be it in the SEC championship or, of course, in the NCAA tournament. So, disappointing result for LSU. Hat tip to all the fans who made it an absolutely incredible environment Saturday night in the PMAC. Here's hoping the next time will be the charm for Kim Mulkey and the Tigers. Okay, that's going to do it for us here on today's episode of Locked on LSU. Do me a favor, please smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell so you're notified whenever we post a new video. If you're on podcast, please subscribe on your favorite podcast app, rate us, leave a review, and of course, please let a friend know that if they love the Tigers, we got you here every single day for Locked on LSU. It's your team every day.